Hello and welcome back to Projects in Java. Today we're going to continue on our servlet project. We're going to create our first servlet. But before we do that, let's go to our workspace folder. And here we have our editor project. Just going to copy that, paste it here. And then we'll rename this folder editor applet. Now we can go back to Eclipse, create a new Java project. And we'll give it the name of that folder we just made. Click Finish. And so now that we have our editor application back in Eclipse, we can convert this to an applet. And we'll open up the first class that gets loaded, the login class. And to convert this to an applet, all we need to do is change this from extends jpanel to extends applet. Import applet. We'll change the constructor to public void init for initialize. And we'll remove the main method. And we'll run this, and now we have an applet. And so this might work fine in Eclipse, but it wouldn't write to the server. And so the user wouldn't be able to log in from any PC and access their files. So let's close this, and let's create our first servlet. So let's go to our verified Java file. And since we're verifying the user, we're getting the username and password that they've input into the applet. And that's going to get submitted via the post method. So here in do post, the first thing we're going to do is read the input. So we're going to create a buffered reader. And now this reader will be different based off of whatever input you provide. So if you're reading in something like an image file or things like that, you need to read it in differently. So we'll call request.getReader. And we'll import buffered reader. And then we'll create a string called data. And that is going to be equal to reader.readLine. And then we need another buffered reader. We'll call this input. And this is going to read from our passwords file. So new buffered reader. And here we'll use that directory that I showed you earlier. If you don't have it, you can create it now. And you can create an empty password file in there. And then we'll have a string tokenizer called user data. And this is going to be equal to a new string tokenizer with the data that we have. And then we'll create another string with the username. So user data.next token. And a string pass for the password. And that's going to be the next token. Then another string for the stored password. That one won't be assigned yet. And another string to read the first line of our input file. And so same while loop that we had in the editor program. So while line does not equal null, we're going to create a new string tokenizer, call this st, is equal to a new string tokenizer, and we'll pass that the line. And then if user is equal to st.nextToken, then the stored path is equal to the following token. So next token again. And line is equal to input.readLine. And we'll add some brackets here and break once we get the stored password. Then we'll close the password file, so input.close. And then we'll compare the stored password with the current password. So we have to set that to null so that even if the stored password is not set in the while loop, this if statement will work. And so here, if the passwords are equal, we'll call response.setStatus. And we have a servlet response. And we'll put accepted. And then we'll create a session. So HTTP session. We'll call this session is equal to request.getSession. And we'll pass it true. And so this will allow us to pass information on to the other servlets. And by passing the Boolean value of true, if there isn't one, this will create one. Then here we can set an attribute, so session.setAttribute. And we'll pass it two parameters, so user as a string, and then the username. And so now that we have our session and our attribute set in another servlet, we can get the session and then get the attribute. And another thing we can do is we can write to the applet. So we'll create an output stream writer. We'll call this writer is equal to new output stream writer. And we'll pass that response.getOutputStream. And now we can write to the applet, so writer.write. And we'll say user has logged in. And once we're done writing, we'll call writer.flush. And then writer.close. And if this fails, we'll call else. And we'll just copy this. And we have another response that says unauthorized. So I'll use that. And so now let's run this on the Tomcat server. So let's go to run, run as, run on server. It's going to ask you to pick the Tomcat server. And click finish. It'll load the server and open up an Eclipse browser with that servlet. And so in our next video, we'll set up the app to use this servlet.